cases and like the exceptions or like the rape or?
Sure, that's an interesting.
So I feel like that comes up a lot too.
Well, my first response is that rape is 1% of abortions, and from a purely pragmatic standpoint, keep it. Go ahead and have a rape exception and get rid of the other 99%, and when we get to that, then we can talk about it from a pragmatic standpoint. From a moral standpoint, the pro-life movement is split on the issue. 59% of pro-lifers think there should be an exception for rape, which is actually higher than I thought. And I would bet that if they had taken that poll and divided it by how active the pro-lifers are, the more active ones would make less of an exception. I just got in a huge debate about this within secular pro-life because I think there should be a rape exception, and there's a lot of people in secular pro-life that really, really don't. So what I'm telling you now is a personal view. It's not an official secular pro-life position. There's even people within like those of us that run secular pro-life that strongly disagree with me, and I said that so they know. But I think there should be an exception because even though morally it's no different, I don't think. If you were plugged into the violinist, if I was plugged into that violinist, I think I would stay plugged in, even though it's a completely ridiculous situation, because it's not his fault and I don't want him to die, right? If there was a car crash and I could donate blood, I think I would voluntarily, right? And if, God forbid, I ever got pregnant due to rape, I don't think I could have an abortion. I mean, I know I couldn't have an abortion. That being said, the bodily integrity thing is a really big deal. And you can't possibly make the argument that a rape victim had any responsibility, any consent, any choice. And if you force gestation on a rape victim, that really is forced gestation. That, I mean, compared to all the other cases we're talking about. So personally, I think I would advocate morally against it, but legally I think it should be an exception, and I would just try to increase resources for those women. Apparently, I can't quote this for certain, but I've been told in my arguments about this that most rape victims who do get pregnant don't choose abortion to begin with. So it's apparently a really big misconception that they all want to, and that's great. I think that's great. But I still think that it should be legal. My opinion. There are those in the secular pro-life. In fact, I can direct you if you want to blog posts from secular pro-life. I wrote the one arguing for the rape exception, and then the next day, one of the leaders wrote one arguing against it, so it was, and she got a lot more likes than me, so I don't know. And then as far as life of the woman, I think Gallup found that it was like 68% of pro-lifers think that abortion should be legal in those cases, which is actually lower than I thought. If someone's going to die either way, it kind of changes the situation. I think that it should be legal because it's sort of like self-defense, but not everybody does, you know. So those come down to really personal perspectives, and I think the hard cases get brought up a lot because they're not straightforward, and especially if you're in an argument, they give pro-choicers a chance to watch you kind of trip, because it sounds, even if you really do think it, it's uncomfortable talking about abortion. It's even more uncomfortable talking about abortion and rape. So, you know, yeah, that's pretty much where I am on it.
And then for the bodily integrity, I was also curious. On the flip side, like, yes, bodily integrity of removing the fetus to maintain body integrity, but
Sure.
in the process, you're actually still not maintaining the bodily integrity you had before because you're ripping out the fetus.
Sure.
I mean, do you ever get into that kind of argument
yeah.
too? Like, what is the effects of it versus if you left?
Yeah, there's a lot of argument about that because one of the big things people talk about is killing versus letting die. So it's one thing to unplug from the violinist and then he dies, but you didn't go stab him, right? And I mean, you probably all already know because you're pro-lifers, but abortion is pretty violent, right? I think that bodily integrity, like for example with the rape exception, a rapist takes away a woman's bodily integrity, no question. But anytime anybody uses your body and you don't want them to, that takes away your bodily integrity. The rapist takes it away, but if you're pregnant and you don't want to be, then the fetus takes away. Not in the sense that the fetus is some conniving entity. The fetus is the most innocent thing you could think of. It's never had a chance to make a choice ever, right? But in the sense that the violinist would be, or whatever, you know. So it's still taking away your bodily integrity. if you remove the fetus, if you have an abortion or induced early labor or whatever, your body is not going to be exactly the same as it was before pregnancy, but that's not what bodily integrity is about. If we could make everything exactly the same, we would, but the point is to stop another person from using your body against your will, even if the process of stopping them means your body won't be exactly the same afterward. At least that's my understanding. Thanks, really good questions. Those are, it gets into really tricky, subtle issues, I think. Yeah.
What kinds of responses did you get when you said you were doing stuff online?
You mean what do you mean? Over the last few years?
Earlier when you were telling me.
Oh, I have literally had hundreds and hundreds of arguments about abortion. I think that almost everything I think now has been carefully honed from people questioning all of it. I recommend it. If you're really interested in making sure that your view makes sense, and a lot of people aren't.
And if you're very patient.
And if you're very patient. Okay,
Very.
The internet might not be the best place to do it, but if you can find someone who's calm and who doesn't agree with you to talk about it, it helps, okay? Especially if it's a friend, because that might not be as emotional, but you find someone, you want people to poke as many holes in your argument as possible so that you know where they are and you can either fill them or realize that maybe you don't really agree with this. I have yet to get to that second part, but I don't think, I would have been really impressed and shocked if anybody tonight said anything I haven't heard before. We've argued about everything. I didn't even get into things about, sex ed or contraception or more of the philosophical stuff, or there's been some really bizarre conversations, even if you leave religion out of it, that get to be offshoots of this. So I would say that most of the responses have been overwhelmingly negative. With people who disagree with you. I've been called all sorts of ridiculous things. My favorite one was the benevolent dictatress, Eileen Conservative, and I was called an Obama-loving something. I don't even remember. And that was because I called out a pro-lifer for saying something that was untrue. I wasn't angry. It just wasn't. It was an untrue thing. And so they assumed immediately that I was, the flip side of these stereotypes I talked about before with right-wing extremists. Apparently, if you go against pro-life at all, you're a liberal. So it goes both ways. It doesn't make any sense. But it's been really good. I think it's been really good, like I said, to argue about it. Not just this, anything that you really hold dear, if you want to know that it makes sense. So, yeah.
This is kind of theoretical, but let's just say in the future they figured out a way to make an artificial womb.
I would hope that abortion would just be over.
Transfer the baby. Well, how do you think that would change things?
Well, the bodily integrity argument's out, right? Completely. I mean, you can get your bodily integrity back without killing anyone, so what possible justification could there be for killing them? I would hope that if there's an artificial womb, we would not be having this conversation anymore. The only time there would be abortions would be for wanted pregnancies that went terribly wrong later and it was, life-threatening, hopefully.
How are the laws established now in regard to viability again? After it's viable, it's not legal?
No, that's not true. Okay, Roe v. Wade set up a trimester system so that I think it was once it hits after the first trimester, it might be up to the second, I actually don't remember, then the state can intervene. But then the same day there was a less famous case called Doe v. Bolton about abortion, and it basically said that the state can intervene except for in cases where the mother's health is at risk, but they defined health as anything including physical, mental, psychological, financial, familial. So basically it was like, abortion is illegal, except if you think it shouldn't be. Like if the doctor agrees that the mother's health is at risk in any of those contexts. It doesn't come up very often because very few women who don't want their pregnancies would wait that long. Those abortion procedures are much more invasive and difficult and expensive. Usually late-term abortions are because of wanted pregnancies where something went wrong. Not always. Sometimes women don't know they're pregnant for a long time, but usually.